Welcome to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. Legal issues simplified through real client stories and real-world experiences. Creating simplicity in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to another episode of Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto, my co-host, Michael Byrd.
As business attorneys for healthcare practices, we meet a lot of interesting people and learn their amazing stories. This season's theme is the future of wellness, where longevity, advanced weight loss solutions, and anti-aging innovations collide. Get ready for insights from the people driving the evolution of the medical industry.
Well, Michael, I'm excited about our world-famous guest for today's show. In fact, this is his third time on our podcast, and we've actually been on his podcast twice.
Me too, Brad. But first, while I was doing a little show prep, I was reminded of a story about cloning. This is not a news story, but I am realizing that you and I have not talked about it.
Okay.
Did you see the story a while back about Tom Brady cloning his dog?
Absolutely. It was a very fascinating read.
Well, apparently, for those who haven't heard, his pet dog, Junie, was cloned from his beloved pet, Lua, who had died in 2023. Brady is an investor in a company, Colossal Biosciences, and he had collected a blood sample from Lua, and Colossal Biosciences took it from there.
Well, first fun fact, audience members, is Colossal Biosciences is actually based in Dallas. Second, I guess not fun fact, but assumption here, we're assuming that Juno and Lua were good dogs.
Yeah, I mean, I would think so. Yes. I am curious, Brad, if money was not a factor, how would you feel about cloning one of your pets?
Well, actually, the funny thing is, as soon as I actually read that article, I was talking to my wife, Micah, about it. And we were talking about if we would do the same. And we both simultaneously agreed that we would clone our dog, Biscuit, because he was the goodest of all dogs. What about you, Michael?
Samson would theoretically be a candidate. I wonder if I would be able to eliminate bad habits like barking at cars, people, and dogs that walk in front of our house, and from eating women's panties. You think they could clone that out of him?
Well, besides that, I guess he's a good dog. But audience members, if we had more time, I could tell you so many stories about why Samson should never be cloned.
Well, we do love Samson so much, but yes, you're right. He probably should not be cloned.
All right. So do we know how Tom's dog, Juno, is doing?
Junie. I don't. I kind of got trapped whenever this came out and all the memes. The funniest one I saw was someone speculating that Tom Brady himself actually seemed like a clone.
Well, that's a fair assessment. All right. Well, let's bring on today's guest.
Okay. Longtime close friend Grant Stevens is joining us today. He is a plastic surgeon. And he has a long list of accolades. He is a University of Oregon grad, WashU School of Medicine, heavily involved with the USC Division of Aesthetic Surgery, ran fellowship for many years. He's the past president of the Aesthetic Society and has published countless scientific research articles to better the field of plastic surgery. And he has a podcast himself that we've been on. We mentioned The Technology of Beauty. Grant, thanks for being here.
Hey, thank you so much, guys, for having me. It's an honor and a true pleasure to be on your show for the third time. Thank you.
Awesome, Grant. Well, we know that you also are a huge dog person. Can you see yourself cloning one of your beloved dogs?
Absolutely. I was sitting here thinking of all the wonderful dogs I've had. And I have 3 here now. I would clone all 3 of them, especially Tuxedo. But I can think back of the dogs I've had in my youth and earlier years. And absolutely, I would clone my dogs. No question.
I think it's an overstatement or an understatement to say that Grant's a huge dog person.
Well, I love the name Tuxedo. That's a very cool name.
He goes by Tux, but his formal name is Tuxedo.
Love it.
Clearly his formal name.
Tux.
All right, Grant, let's jump in. So this season, we're focusing on the future of wellness. I mean, I know you and I have had many conversations about this. when I use the word wellness, I'm talking about kind of the catch-all for longevity, weight loss, anti-aging. There's that whole new area, newish area that's kind of invading medicine and particularly invading aesthetics. But first, I want the audience, you to introduce to the audience your podcast, talk about the technology of beauty, and then when this on release, we're just days away from the Aesthetics Innovation Summit. I'd love for you to talk a little about that as well.
It'd be my pleasure. Thank you. So the Technology of Beauty is a podcast. We have about 200 shows on it. It's a feed through all the typical podcast feeds. The one I like the best is YouTube because you get to see it and listen to it. And the podcast has been around for a few years, and we have a chance, or I have a chance, to interview the movers and shakers of the beauty business. And I have the opportunity to interview both industry as well as providers, but it's primarily geared towards new technologies, new goods, services. It's exciting things, varied guests. We have a studio in Manhattan Beach, California, and every Tuesday we have a new program. However, some Tuesdays we'll play an older program that is germane to news or a reason for it. But I would encourage you to check out the Technology of Beauty if you're interested in aesthetics, both surgical as well as non-surgical. And as we're going to find out today, there's a heavy emphasis on various non-surgical aesthetic services, goods, products, and so forth. So that's the Technology of Beauty. And along with that, with no direct relationship, but over time it has started getting related, and that is a program, an event we started 7 years ago called Aesthetic Innovation Summit, and that, or AIS, and that is on the Wednesday before the Aesthetic Society show that is now called MEET, capital MEET, all caps, and that is our annual meeting of the American Society for Aesthetic Plastic Surgery, or what we now call the Aesthetic Society, which we start with hot topics on Thursday. But I am the co-founder and chair of something called Aesthetic Innovation Summit. And that is a lot like Technology of Beauty, but it's all in one day. And we include industry, finance, as well as clinicians and entrepreneurs. And it's extremely exciting. This year it's on May 13th, which is Wednesday, and it's in Boston, immediately preceding the Aesthetic Society show, MEET. And you guys have been on it. You've been to it many times. We film there. We film Technology of Beauty at AIS, as well as I get the chance to interview people on stage, kind of like a fireside chat, almost like what you're doing with me right now, and bring people on that people wouldn't otherwise get a chance to hear just what they're planning. This year, we have Nadeem, who's the CEO of Revance, and a lot of people don't know him, although he's been on Technology of Beauty, and he recently took over as the CEO of Revance. As you know, Revance was sold to Crown. He was the CFO of Crown. Crown and Revance came together. They have Revance. He's now the CEO. And he's a very exciting interview. And what he's doing is somewhat novel. And I'm going to pull that out of him during the fireside chat in the morning of Wednesday, May 13th. So I encourage you, if you're interested, if you're coming to Boston, we have tickets online. We have some complimentary passes for Aesthetic Society members. And I would encourage you to come check it out.
That's awesome. And I can vouch for you, Grant. We've been invited multiple years to come see it. It is fascinating what is going on at that. Going back to your movers and shakers, they're all there. And I've really enjoyed some of the panel talks y'all have had up there. Even, Michael and I, just being silly lawyers, just hearing what's going on in the industry has been fascinating. So I'm glad that you continue to promote that event. But that kind of easily bleeds into like what I was thinking of while you were talking about. Our focus for this is really on the wellness side, and based on all the people you're visiting with, we're seeing this wave of interest in wellness. How is it impacting the aesthetic industry?
Well, I like how you bundled up all of them into the concept of wellness. And for me, it's really has to do with looking and feeling the best we can at any age. That's really the way I sort of personalize it. And it includes those areas that you talked about at the top of your show, and we'll touch on them. But really, it's more than just surgery. It's way more than just surgery. And plastic surgeons originally started as surgeons. But as we look at this and we look at the influence of non-surgical and minimally invasive technologies, it just keeps on going. And we can start anywhere. And right now, because it's such a hot topic, we can talk about weight loss. And then out of that, what happens? We all know that we have a problem in America, overweight, obesity, and so forth. But now with various modalities, and they're not just one anymore, there's various pharmacologic interventions which lead to 10, 15, and sometimes 20% weight loss, which originally started to minimize the effects of diabetes and people on, right on the cusp of becoming diabetic. But out of that grew this huge industry of weight loss, pharmacologic weight loss. And with that came people feeling better and potentially looking better. In fact, they do look better and they're healthier. But, oh, by the way, they've got extra skin, or they have skin laxity, or they lost weight everywhere, including places perhaps they didn't want to lose weight. So that opens the door to skin tightening and body contouring, both surgical and non-surgical. It also opens the door to literally putting fat back in, or other fillers, say the gaunt face, because you may look great, your tummy may be flatter, but what if your face looks gaunt and you look worse on your face, potentially? And I'm not saying that happens all the time, but there's an area there. There's also the concept of better living through chemistry, and I use that euphemistically, but the people on peptides, on hormonal replacement. We've had hormonal replacement for a long time. We think of women on birth control pills, or perimenopausal women on estrogens and progesterones. But now we have people of every age group coming in and being tested, men and women, and then supplementing the hormones. Take men with testosterone, women with testosterone sometimes, as well as estrogen and progesterone. So there's the hormones. Then there's also the peptides. And you know about all these IV clinics where we're injecting, if you will, IV peptides. We also have topical peptides and transcutaneous delivery of these various peptides and other biologically active substances. And that's a whole nother subject we could go into. And maybe we'll talk about it a little bit later. But we have these companies, and they'll be on AIS, Aesthetic Innovation Summit, that are bringing very novel technologies to touch on and help us solve the problems I just now talked about. And I could keep going nonstop, and I don't want to do that. So I hope I've given you somewhat of an answer, and we'll leave it at that. And you can take me on from there.
No, that's great. And what I've always loved this about you, Grant. You're so passionate about this industry, and it just comes through so quick, so easily off. I mean, just hearing you talk about it makes me so excited for the industry, where it's going. But I'll let you jump in, Michael.
No, I'm curious. I want to tap into kind of, so, I mean, for years when you were, you would go to your practice and you would be adding these new technologies all the time. How do you advise like the practices? I mean, there's so much exciting stuff about how to consider, what to add and how to add, some of these new services.
Michael, as the fellowship director, and I did the fellowship for 27 years, and my fellows after their residency would be with me for a year, and that's, they'd always say, Dr. Stevens, what should I add? I'm going to go into practice. What should I buy, or what should I provide? And there's a lot of ways of looking at this, but at the bottom line is it's got to be profitable, or you're not going to have a practice. So to answer that question, it depends on the audience I'm speaking to, vis-a-vis, am I talking to a person starting a practice? Am I talking to private equity that owns a number of practices? Am I talking to an established surgeon or physician or even derm ENT and so forth? So, and then is it driven by the technology, or is it driven by the fact that we need to make a profit? Now, not everything does make a profit. Some things attract patients for other things. And as you know, I was never one to shy away from new technologies. I'm addicted to it. I mean, that's why I started the technology of beauty. And that was actually came from my practice. That was my mantra for the practice. But I don't think that's for everyone, because let's take devices for a moment. You could buy so many devices, you bankrupt the practice, and now you don't have a practice. And we've all seen that. So I would, before I answer the question, I would ask back to the person or to you, who's the audience? If a person asks me and they're going to practice, I'd say, well, if you're non-surgical, you have to have some sort of IPL device. And I'm not here to endorse any particular brand of IPL, but I found that to be a good starting point for people over the years. It doesn't really get to what we're talking about per se, but and there's some things we're talking about that take very little capital put in your practice. So when we talk about non-surgical weight loss, or we talk about peptides and other things to improve health and wellness, those things are easy to put into your practice and very inexpensive. Now, when we start talking about technologies and capital acquisitions, one has to do some very serious research and soul searching. What do you want to put at risk? How much capital do you want to put at risk? Now, thankfully, there are a lot of ways that these things can now be obtained or financed depending on the way the companies want to sell or lease or provide them to you. And there's some very ingenious models that are coming out right now. They're going to be discussed at AIS.
Oh, wow.
Where a person could maybe obtain, I'll give you an example, and I'm purposely going to be a little vague because I don't want to steal the thunder. But imagine, say, 8 or 10 devices, capital devices that are on the plate. And imagine you can pick 3 of them. And you pick the 3 you like. Maybe there's a body contouring or skin tightening. No, let's say a skin tightening, non-surgical. Let's say a fat reduction. And then let's say a skin quality one. And you pick them. And those are the ones you pick. Or it could be a laser, whatever. You pick 3. And now you pay a flat amount to the company that has access to all of them. And that's a monthly amount. And then imagine at the end of a year, you do a reassessment. Which ones have been the most effective in your practice? Okay? What's the ROI? Maybe one's a dog, so you want to get rid of it. Now, in a traditional model, it ends up being a coat rack, and it gets pushed to the corner of your practice, and it collects dust, and you're out the capital or the lease or whatever. But imagine if you could push that back to the original company, and now pick another one to replace it. You still have 3. You pick the top 1 or 2. You get rid of the dog. So now you pick another one, and so forth. And this continues for a certain period of time. And actually, your payments are going towards owning it. So imagine then if you did this, and after 3, 4, 5 years, you owned all 3 of them that you like, that are doing well. Or imagine there's a new technology comes out. So every year you have a chance. Let's say it's doing all right, but now there's a brand new way to tighten skin, non-surgical. Imagine taking that device, trading it in, and applying that credit back to the brand new technology. Because we have many, many very exciting new technologies on the horizon right now. They're not commercially available yet. Some are very exciting, and they're going to be presented. But there's some that aren't. And we have a very exciting area called Shark Tank, just like Shark Tank on television. And you guys have seen Shark Tank. Every year it gets the highest ratings at AIS. And we have some technologies that are going to be presented at AIS this year in Shark Tank that are revolutionary, because people are getting away from surgery. They don't want the anesthesia. They don't want the risk. They don't want the downtime. They don't want the scarring and so forth. We're never going to totally replace surgery. But if I lost, say, 20, 30, 40 pounds, whatever it is, and I have some floppy skin on my tummy or my arms or my legs, I don't necessarily want to have a knife cut it out. But what if I could use some non-surgical technology based on either ultrasound or radio frequency or laser or various energy sources to tighten that skin? And let's say I could get 60, 70% improvement without the downtime, without the scarring, without the risk, and without the anesthesia. Most people would say that's a pretty good deal. And I will tell you right now, that exists. And that's exciting. And so when we talk about overall health and wellness, again, it starts with the things we talk about: weight loss and improved quality of life. But there are non-surgical, minimally invasive technologies out there that will improve the final result and contribute to that wellness that you were talking about.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you, Grant, you nailed it on the mistakes that people make when they nothing against these trade shows. Everyone who works at those shows are doing a great job of try to explain to a doctor why they need that product. But sometimes they get so excited they buy that $100,000 machine and their patients don't need that. And then they want to return it and they can't because they're not returnable. So what you're describing, I mean, the number of times Michael and I've had this conversation with a client that wants to try something different, but they can't, or the newest machine came out and they have the old one. So that is very exciting just to hear that alone as something that's coming on, that's coming out. But Mike, I know we have maybe time for one more question. And I was thinking, you were kind of leaning that way with the technology already, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts are as to like, where is longevity and weight loss and anti-aging? Where it's going to be 5 years from now, especially in the aesthetic society? Space. Yeah.
Well, obviously I don't have a crystal ball, but I think the past and the present does help us predict the future. So we've already identified a few things. There's a trend away from surgery. We know that. Mm-hmm. Non-surgicals have increased tenfold faster than surgery. So they're clearly, if you're talking about 5 years from now, we will have more non-surgical options. As a surgeon, I'm not suggesting we're not going to do surgery. Our surgeries will improve. It'll be less invasive. They already are compared to what it was 20 years ago and 10 years ago. The procedures we do now are far more refined. But in the future, they're going to continue. But I believe non-surgicals will continue to grow at the rate in which they're growing. And they will address the things we talked about: skin quality, in other words, both the appearance as well as redundancy, laxity, and so forth. Also, redistribution of volume. Now, it won't all be fat, but there are many companies that are going to be presented this year at AIS and others that are processing our fat and making it take more, in other words, making it more effective. But it's not just fat. Now, there has been a move away from hyaluronic acid fillers, but there are other fillers, and they're going to still have a place, but there are other fillers which stimulate our body to make more collagen and actually grow, if you will, and improve the quality of the skin as well as contour, because people are losing weight non-discriminately, if you will. I mentioned earlier at the top of the show about increasing volume in the mid-face and the gaunt face. And the same thing can be said about the breast. The breast is composed of a lot of fat. The majority of the breast is fat. And women are losing weight and their breasts are getting smaller and saggier, and they're not happy about that. And so we have ways to increase the volume of their breast with fat and other things. And that's going to be more refined for sure, as well as non-surgical breast lifts, as well as minimally invasive breast lifts. And so I think the overall theme, you asked me of 5 years from now, less surgery, or no, the growth of surgery will not keep up with the non-surgical. We still will have surgery, and it will grow at the rate it's growing now, I think. The non-surgicals are going to grow at 10x, I believe. There'll be access to a lot of these technologies through non-plastic surgeons. I know the plastic surgeons hate it when I talk about this, but if we look at Brazil, the majority of fillers and toxins in Brazil are being administered by dentists. And around the world, it's not just plastic surgeons, derms, facial plastics, and what we call the core. There are other extenders as well as non-traditional aesthetic providers. I don't make the rules. I'm just reporting what I'm seeing. So I think right now it's estimated that 10% of the 10% of the dentists are providing aesthetic alternatives to their dental patients. There's 350,000 dentists in America. It's estimated that 35,000 of them are providing aesthetic services, be it med spa, fillers, or toxins. I think 5 years from now, that's going to be easily 20 or 30%. I think dentists are going to be invading the aesthetic market, especially of the face and neck. I'm not suggesting they should travel below the clavicle or even necessarily that I embrace all of it, but I'm just reporting what I see. I can't help but see the number of dentists exploding, and I've seen it already in Brazil. I watched what happened over the last 15 years. So I think we're going to see dentists providing aesthetic services.
Do you think
it'll crawl into also laser, light-based technologies, and various capital acquisitions as well as injectables?
Do you think, Grant, that aesthetic practices, call it whether it's a med spa or even a traditional plastic surgery practice, that they'll start offering or continue or further offer some of these wellness type services like the IV peptides and exosomes, if that ever becomes FDA approved and that sort of thing?
Yeah, we haven't talked about exosomes, and that's one of the things it's a whole nother show, right? Both topical and now injectable. But yes, if they don't, they'll be left in the dust, Michael. It's like the 727 study that we talk about, and we don't have time to go into that right now. But basically, in a nutshell, if they're not providing the non-surgicals and the wellness, then patients will be getting it from their dentists or from their gynecologists or their general practitioners and so forth. And so as a part of survival, as we go into the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, as plastic surgeons, we must provide these other health and wellness services. If we don't, we'll be like the dinosaurs. It's an absolute essential. And I've said this for years. I said this about cool sculpting when we were losing. And actually, if you go all the way back to liposuction. So I really believe that if we now are talking to the plastic surgeons or the plastic surgery roll-ups, they must include this as a part of their offerings. And, Clint and I co-founded a series of med spas called Orange Twist, and they're now all over the country. In fact, we have a number of them now in Texas, as you know. And it's physician light, and it's all about health and wellness and providing care, both injectables and lasers and light-based technologies, as well as the various things we're talking about, exosomes, topical and other. And also, we haven't touched on hair yet. I mean, part of looking and feeling your best, and this is for men and women, maybe more for women, because women have always had full hair. Well, during COVID, they lost a lot of hair. And as they get into perimenopausal, the whole women's hair business, both thicker and more, the higher count as well as thicker per follicle, that's a gigantic business, gigantic. And women love it. And that's where Get Hair MD comes in. And and there's topical, oral, light-based and energy-based, injectable. There's so many ways we can have better hair, both men and women. So, I mean, I can go on and on, obviously.
Yeah, that was a great
25 minutes. We can talk 5 hours.
Well, our time went by. It was amazing. I'm grateful for joining us on the Legal 1-2-3s with ByrdAdatto for the third time. And of course, grateful for you. We'll go to break and do a quick wrap up. Thanks for joining us.
It's my absolute pleasure. I hope you come back on my show, and I look forward to seeing you in Boston on Wednesday, May 13th at the Aesthetic Innovation Summit.
Many business owners use legal counsel as a last resort rather than as a proactive tool that can further their success. Why? For most, it's the fear of unknown legal costs. ByrdAdatto's Access Plus program makes it possible for you to get the ongoing legal assistance you need for one predictable monthly fee. That gives you unlimited phone and email access to the legal team, so you can receive feedback on legal concerns as they arise. Access Plus, a smarter, simpler way to access legal services. Find out more. Visit ByrdAdatto.com today.
Well, welcome back to Legal 1-2-3 with ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto, with my co-host, Michael Byrd. Now, Michael, this theme is the future of wellness. And we had such a great conversation with Grant that we probably went on technologies and wellness. Probably went over a little bit today, but I think we can just have one quick takeaway for our audience members.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be adding these services, just the reminder on scope of practice is so important that you you figure that out. A lot of these longevity, peptides, all this stuff is outside the normal course of aesthetic training. And so everyone has to make sure they're trained on it, that you have the right licenses involved in the treatment.
Well, audience members, that's all the time we have today. But next Wednesday, we'll be back while we continue to explore the future of wellness when our good friend and client, Dr. Paul Frank, joins us while he discusses the impact wellness is having on the dermatology industry. Thanks again for joining us today. And remember, if you like this episode, please subscribe, make sure to give us a 5-star rating, and share with your friends.
You can also sign up for the ByrdAdatto newsletter by going to our website at ByrdAdatto.com.
ByrdAdatto is providing this podcast as a public service. This podcast is for educational purposes only. This podcast does not constitute legal advice, nor does it establish an attorney-client relationship. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by ByrdAdatto. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Please consult with an attorney on your legal issues.